Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Penny Dreadful City of Angels. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, there's the whole situation with Lewis, obviously, seeing his friends. These are people he knew, that are dead now. It's like, I think for him, it's like, he probably wondered if it was just a car accident or not. Obviously, the bullets prove, it wasn't just some accident. It's like, they were both shot twice. So he's asking the MA just kind of like falsify your stuff for now. At least like take your time because he wants to investigate this on his own. I guess because this is personal to him because this was something off the record. He wasn't doing this as a police officer. It was just his own, personal war that he's facing. So for him, and you see him kind of break down, at the stairs because it's like these are people he dragged into this. They're dead because of him, and also knowing who it is that killed him too. I think it adds an extra layer to the whole situation. But regardless. So Lewis is mainly dealing with that the entire episode. Since we're talking about Lewis, let's go ahead and continue down the story path with him tracking down that college student and just like, oh yeah, my captain, I'm just kind of like small fry. I'm just being told what to do. So, and he drives him out there. It's like, oh, you're driving him to where your friends died. I was like, so how are you going to handle this? It's like, get out. He's like, I don't want to. He's like, pistol whips him across the face, drags him out, kicks him in the face. I was like, Jesus. They're going to kill me. He's like, what do you think I'm going to do? I literally pistol whipped you. He's like, I broke your nose, broke your teeth, and I'm going to throw you off this cliff for the coyotes to eat. But I love him saying the line of, that's what I'm here for, to serve and protect. I'm like, I love you say you're here to serve and protect after you talked about breaking his nose, breaking his teeth, and then throwing him down a cliff for coyotes to eat. I really like Nathan Lane in this role. I think I don't know, he brings a little like something to this role that I really like. But the fact of the matter is, because obviously he wants to know like what the kid's involved in, because it seems like it doesn't seem like he's wholeheartedly into this. Like I said last time, like when Lewis was spying on him, it seemed like he was crying. Like I think he's being forced in this situation. Like it seems like they probably like hold stuff above you. It's like either you roll with us or we kill you, or probably kill the people that are important to you. So it seems like he's just being forced in this situation. But we'll kind of have to see because we never really got the full scope of that conversation between him and Lewis. So there's that. Another side of this situation episode is obviously Raul. Him and Mateo are talking. He's talking about Rico. It's oh yeah, he was so cool and stuff like that. The cops kind of shitting and pissing themselves. But then like obviously it's like there's a situation where Mateo's like, do you remember what happened? He's like, no, I don't remember anything. I was like, are you going to tell him? I was like, please don't tell him because that's just going to ruin. But he tells him anyway because it's like, you kind of have the right to know it was Tiago that shot you. It's like he, was calling out to you. You were killing everybody. You were killing the cops. And, he was calling out to you because you didn't hear him. And it's like, and I thought that was so interesting where he was basically like, if I was, Panchuo, it's like, if I was dad, like, I would slit his throat, and Raul did not appreciate it. She's like basically like, shut your damn mouth. That's your brother. You show him respect. He's like, the fact that, and I thought that was so interesting coming from Raul. It's like, I think it leaves him a little conflicted, but at the same time, he's like, we can't understand the shoes that Tiago was in. It's like, come on, like, do you think it's easy for him? He's literally both a Chicano and a police officer. He's part of both worlds and at the same time rejected by both. I would not want to be him. I want to be anyone other than him because he doesn't know who he is because he's caught between both worlds. It's like, so which side do you give into? Do you your Mexican side, or do you give into your police officer side? That's a complicated, element to be a part of. It's like, what do you do in that situation? And so, I thought that was kind of interesting because I'm curious to see what Mateo and Tiago's relationship is going to look like going forward. Like now that Raul kind of drilled that into his head, and even afterwards, it's like Tiago was like, "You okay?" He's like, "Yeah," and Raul takes Tiago's hand and places it on his chest, and it's just kind of like they both. Well, Tiago might not know that Raul knows, but he's still got that guilt because there was that line from Raul. He was like, "The fact is, you want to know hell? You look in our brother's eyes. Show him kindness." It's like it's not a favorable position that our brother is in. So he's doing the best he can with the shitty circumstances he's been given. So I just thought that was just this interesting like moment between them. At the same time, there's the whole situation with Alex, kind of pushing, Townsend, it's like, oh, a meeting, with our Nazi pals, about the motorway and stuff like that. But then there's that councilwoman, and I love her basically calling Townsend out for his bullshit. She's like, oh yeah, like, it's like, oh, trying to build this roadway on the back of like 4 dead cops and 8, dead citizens. So it's just kind of like, I love, like, she's like, oh, I'm not buying your BS. It's like, you want to build that roadway, it's going to be over, like, you want to even name it after that deceased cop. You're going to do it over my dead body. And he's like, then so be it. Like, granted, she didn't hear that. So later on, he's meeting with the Nazis, and I love him trying to act all tough, because obviously for him, it's like, oh, like, he wants to know the ins and outs of it, like, where the money's coming from and stuff. Like, they're like, basically like, oh, you don't have to worry about, like, it's just like, oh yeah, it's charities and stuff like that we've set up as kind of like shell companies for like the funding and stuff like that. But he's like, he wants to know the ins and outs, because I guess he doesn't want any surprises. He wants to be in the know about what they're doing, but they're like, you don't need to know. And so I love, because like Home Dude calls him out, because it's like, basically because like you're the one with real audacity. He's like holding up that cop bloody shirt, bringing up the widow. It's like, yeah, you're full of audacities on your own. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, this councilwoman's in the way. Townsend's like, all right, I need you guys to take care of it. And it's like, what way would you? It's like, I want you to take care of her the way you do, or get your, what was it? And I think he referred to the other dude as like a flying monkey or something to do it. And it's just because it's like, don't forget who's in charge here. And then I love they kind of put him in his place by being like, idiot. Basically, I speak for the Fuhrer, and it's like, and it's not just for tonight. For the next 1,000 years, that will be like, basically Germany taking over. And he is saying that basically, like, either you're going to be by our side or under our boot, and at the end of the day, it's going to be your choice where you kind of stand with that. And I thought it was such an interesting situation, because obviously he storms off, and Alex is like, well, thanks a lot, because now I'm gonna have to be dealing with that shit for a week. And you're like, you're not as smart as you think, because if it was as simple, because like he could tell, like Alex could tell he was going to go off and do something, and it's like, because she had given him this wink, like, none of, like, you need to be, because you're in the public eye now, you can't be doing any other like stuff. Like, you need to be basically keep yourself like above reproach, essentially. And I was like, so he's into something very bad that she's afraid might get used against him. And so she knew exactly where he was going. She was like, come on, let's get plastered and like let's get super drunk. And I don't think that went the way she wanted it to, because even I'm like, you don't look pleased. Normally, I feel like you'd be having a smirk on how everything's going. But it seemed like, I don't know whether that was you just playing into Alex being like, oh, this isn't working out, or is it just simply because, like, crap, this didn't go the way you wanted to. I don't think it did, but I don't know, just the look on her face, and the fact that she transforms back into her real form, and she's walking and all the glass is shattering. I think she was super pissed, because I was like, oh yeah, that seemed like it didn't go according to plan. Then there's the whole situation with her and Peter, and like Peter's like, oh, like, she hasn't shown up for her appointments. Like, no, he's like, I'm gonna take the rest of the day off. Frank's crying on the outside. I was like, oh god, what sob story we're gonna create? And then like there she is with like bruises on her face. I was like, okay, here you are. It's like, dude, obviously this would be like very heartbreaking if it were any other circumstances, but we know the circumstances of you're just manipulating him. Like, once again, like, I would not be, and I brought this up last episode, I would not be surprised if how she made Frank from herself, that she makes a fake husband that Peter ends up killing. I don't know. Maybe we'll never go that far, but the fact of the matter is, and she laid down the groundwork, masterfully, of like, oh yeah, Frank doesn't have any friends, he doesn't fit in. Jew kids beat him up at school, and like, and the moment she said Jews, you're like, oh, you can hear the underlining hate. You can hear it like underlined 3 times with quotation marks around it, bold, italics, and everything. It's like, oh yeah, just what buttons to push on Peter, and he's just like, oh, like, my son's birthday party's coming. One of my son's birthday parties is coming up. You can bring Frank over. They're about the same age. That way, because it's like, because she talks about like, oh, he has a bad temper. I sent Frank away so he doesn't know, but he does know anyway. It's like she's laying it on thick, all this stuff. And then like Peter kisses her. She's like, no, not in his house. But thanks for inviting us over. We will come over. And I'm like, oh, dude, this slippery slope. And it's just like, all right, that's lane number 2 you got going. And then later on, we see Mateo. and he goes and meets up. Goes to the Crimson Cat and everything. It's like, okay, and then like the dancing and everything was pretty badass. I really like that. And then like it's like, all right, you need to kiss the queen's ring, and it's like, this is Raina, and it's freaking Natalie Dormer. I was like, okay, here's number 3. It's like, okay, which at the same time, it's like, it makes perfect sense. You're literally striking from 3 different places at once. You're basically striking from the front of like the more political angle with the mayor, and you're kind of dabbling in the Nazi area by proxy, because you're getting someone in a very, well, the councilman who's trying to, you're rising up a councilman, so he's in a very high like political position, and mixing that with kind of the Nazi stuff. Then you're also like feeding it, because I guess like she needs Peter to be the powder cat, because like he's just one nudge away from like becoming what she needs him to be. So, and then it seems like at the same time, the moment this is happening, I'm like, and when the cops show up later on, I'm like, right, which is interesting, because it's like, she plays her roles really well, because it's like, oh, like she's cutting loose as Raina, dancing with Mateo and everything. But I'm like, but the moment the cops show up, I'm like, now you already sparked the fire a little bit from the cops' perspective by getting one of the cops to fire the first shot in episode 1, and now you're feeding on this like racial tension, you know, between everyone at the club and the cops, and you're fanning those flames, and like you're doing it on every front. I'm like, dude, this is the most manipulative supernatural strike that's ever existed. I was like, that's amazing. And amazing in obviously a very fucked up way, but it's crazy to see that. Like, once again, in her mind, it's just kind of like, oh, I'm just fanning the flames that are already there. I'm just kind of nudging humans already in the right, like, they already feel this way. I'm just nudging them, kind of giving them an excuse to be themselves and give into their darker desires, you know? So it's like, for her, it's like, I'm not really manipulating anything. I'm just basically giving them permission to be bad. Like, she basically said that in the first episode. So we kind of see that. And she's kind of, you know, because I thought was even interesting, because even Mateo was like, aren't you white? But she was like, no, because I'm from here and here. Like, I think it's just kind of like, so she grew up in like, I think she said she grew up, like, she's got like Aztec blood in her, essentially. Like, I think it's kind of like she's kind of a mixed bag of like from different places type of situation. And I guess because I wasn't sure like what I meant to look it up. What's the word Pachuo? Like, I'm sure I'm butchering it, but I guess it's like, it's supposed to be kind of like an amalgamation of everything, because she's like, you know, because whether you're you know, where you're Mexican, you know, Aztec, or you're like gay or whatever, like, I think that's what the Crimson Cat's supposed to represent, kind of just like this very like open spectrum, or just like no matter what background you're from, like if like any group that might be considered like a minority or an outsider, I think is kind of where that club is supposed to shine, and that's what they're supposed to represent. So Mateo is kind of like being drawn into it, you know, because Rico was kind of like, the fact of the matter is he's kind of struggled to get to where he is, and he's not willing to start a fight with the cops, a war that they can't win. But obviously, there you go, Reina fanning the flames, and obviously Mateo getting caught up in it. And now now it kind of puts like a 3-way split, because obviously Raul and Tiago already had their differences on things, and now we have Mateo going down his own path. You know, it's so interesting, considering like, you know, her kind of getting mixed up in this, because obviously their mom believes so much in Santa Muerte, and obviously like her handprint still on Tiago, and now it's like, here you are kind of manipulating his little brother, like you manipulated his older brother, whispering in his ear. So it's like that family has such a connection to this supernatural world that, you know, it just strings being pulled in many different directions. And obviously like the whole thing about Raul returning, is that like, once again, is that something he did of his own, or did Santa Muerte do that, you know, kind of listening to Maria's wishes? You know, it becomes that thing of like, you don't have the full scope of everything, at least from where Santa Muerte stands, because it seems like she has no interest in delving into human issues, even though her sister seems like she has no problem diving into human issues and stuff like that. So it's just, I'm curious to see where things kind of, you know, go on that front. Then I thought it was kind of interesting, Molly making excuses like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go like get like this fitting for a costume or something like that. I'm like, you're gonna go meet Tiago. It's like, have you two secretly been meeting? And it's like, no. Like when she runs into him, he's like, like, wait, what? Because it's like, that was like, I was like, oh, you're almost a little bit stalking him, because you just kind of like randomly show up, and it's just like, oh, because he's waiting for the bus and she wants to sit down and talk to him. And I thought, it's kind of, once again, that, there's a little bit of kinship, because for her, it's like she gets to be herself around Tiago, which she never gets to just be Molly. And she was even like, Detective Vegas, she's like, I actually don't even know your name. He's like, Santiago, just call me Tiago. And it's like, oh, they get to kind of be themselves, because she made that whole conversation about, would you want to just be someone else, someone that isn't a freak? And he's like, you're not a freak. She's like, yeah, I was basically made to be a freak around all these other like snake charmers and con artists. Like, she kind of sees herself as one, and just like obviously she has her belief and faith and stuff like that, but she realizes her mom's just using that, so she feels like she's just kind of the same. So that's why she kind of feels like she herself is a freak. She's kind of been raised to be one. And even Tiago, to be able to kind of be somebody else, because for him it's like, at one point in time he felt like he was a decent person, but he doesn't know if he is anymore, especially after more recent events, the whole thing with his brother too. I think that makes him feel like, oh, I'm not a decent person. But her being like, oh, I'll call you Tiago, now you get to just be Tiago. And obviously, like, wanting to let her just be able to be Molly, he spends the day with her, that shooting game, getting her Popeye. I thought that was super adorable. But then you see like Randall's following them, like, you're like, oh, that's not going to end well. We actually learned a little bit about Tiago too. We learned that he had another brother and sister who died from cholera, because he remembers like his dad had brought them there. Like, they weren't able to go on any of the rides, but for him it was like the happiest day of his life. It's like, he's like, at that time his other brother and other sister were still alive. You could tell it was like, they had a very nice time together, but obviously like she couldn't keep the Popeye, because it's just, for her, it's like her mom wouldn't let her, because it would also mean that she wasn't where she said she was. So it's just probably like her mom wants her to stay focused on one thing, and anything else would be a distraction. So she gives it to Tiago, and they kiss and everything, and for him, he's like, I want to stay here a little bit longer, kind of hold on to, the second best day of my life. And I'm just like, and it's this cute, adorable moment between them. But the moment she gets home, her mom brings up like, oh, like, start singing Popeye the Sailor Man, and you're like, ugh. So, obviously Randall told her everything. And then later on in the episode, we had seen her like in her room kind of clenching herself, and her mom in front of her door, like, we'll get to it. Well, we'll go ahead and get to it now. It's like Tiago meets with Lewis at the bar and everything. And Lewis is like, oh, I need some time off, basically, like, to bury one of his friends, because one of his friends didn't really have anyone. So it's like, I don't know if it's just that, or he just using that as an excuse. It's interesting, because I guess he doesn't want to bring Tiago into it yet. I'm curious to see if he ultimately ends up doing it, like his old, side project and everything. And for him, it's a thing of, I can't, it's like, I think he's just using that as, that whole his friend situation. It could be like, oh, I am doing that, but I'm also taking time off to investigate this whole, Nazi situation. But he ended up bringing Tiago he's like, yeah, basically suggesting that Molly might be a suspect. I'm like, this is the crappiest time for this to come out after all that time he's spent with her, both last episode and this episode. But for the fact is, it turns out that Hazlitt and her might have had like a sexual relationship or whatever, because like he apparently had bought a place, was it like in Miami or something like that, with money he was skimming from the church and everything. So it's like, so he's like, the fact is that he's hiding it from Molly's mom must mean that they were banging and stuff like that, which Tiago was like, no, you don't know that. And he was like, basically the only reason why people keep secrets like this, basically, and Lewis was like, it's either for money or sex. And he was like, Hazlitt had plenty enough money, so it had to be a Molly situation. And obviously Tiago was reluctant to believe it, but now this kind of adds her as a suspect to the whole situation, which, and my thought, and I might have brought this up last episode, I might have thought it and didn't include it, but I don't remember. But I always kind of get this inkling because of that. I'm like, now that information's there, I'm like, are we sure that, like, Molly's mom hasn't been pimping her out? Because there was that whole thing of like, that weird thing of like, yeah, like, what did Molly say beforehand? Last episode, she was like, yeah, he was, I forgot what was the word she had used. But basically, it's like we haven't been to him since like the year before. So either that was her covering up the fact is that they had a relationship, or it's that pull away from the fact is actually her mom is pimping her out. So maybe that's why she might have a problem with her dating Tiago. It's like you're supposed to have this virtuous element to yourself. You're like this holy, like, oh, like I'm this, like maybe she's supposed to have like legitimately, maybe it's like a thing of like she's supposed to be like a virgin in people's eyes and her mom pimps her out. That's my thought process. I'm like, you know, especially when she's like curled up like that, because obviously it's like her mom, like it seems like her mom's kind of broken her like mentally and emotionally. So I mean, who knows if there's like could be physical abuse in that as well, but it's like her mom molds her into what she needs her to be. So that's why I'm like, could there be more to that? I don't know. Like I said, my mind kind of goes there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the direction that's all going. But you know, it could be. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. I'm curious to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good